question is, do you want an approach which is like people who are willing to get on stage, talk sensibly, and fight for it, or do you want good old-fashioned dark side? I'm happy with both, but we will build one or the other in the end.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you, Sean. The whole fractionalisation banking system has been tested and tried. A run on a bank is not what it used to be when Northern Rock went down in 08. It was trading yesterday. And so, if I just share what the industry is doing for the UK when it comes to advocacy in government, we ran with the all-party parliamentary group, Crypto Digital Assets, an inquiry. We invited a whole host of different segments to talk about all these issues: fin crime, payments, stablecoin CBDCs, and we invited the banks. Some of them didn't even respond. And this is a member of parliament, an elected official. So what we then did was we're going to host a round table in Westminster with members of the all-party parliamentary group and others in the community to invite members from other APPGs, the FinTech APPG. We met with the chair of that, Adam Frey, Conservative MP, recently. We're going to do a lot of cross-party work with these groups to really raise this issue. So it's really important, especially on the retail piece. And you're right, the reason the banks don't want to send a transaction is because of fraud. They don't want it left to be holding the bag. There is no insurance schemes at the moment, but perhaps there will be. And the new consultation talks about that and perhaps does legitimise the industry a wee bit more, so we might get some uptake. But I'm conscious of time. Are we running 10 minutes? Yeah. We've got 10 minutes. So let's finish up with the last few moments with any questions from the audience. Straight up, chap at the back on the right.
Someone quite senior at the Fed today announced that they thought that CBDC had more problems than it delivered benefits. Discuss? Comment?
All about wheelbarrows.
Discuss.
So in early days, when you moved money from bank to bank, they literally took the money, stuck it in a wheelbarrow, and moved it from the wheelbarrow from one bank to the other bank. That was the settlement time. It was the time it took to physically move the money from one institution to another. We then got payments, we then got electronic, and we did jack shit about updating those rules. Because the bank keeps the money, it keeps the return, it keeps the interest, and it has absolutely no financial incentive to speed that up. With things like CBDCs, I'm totally aware that we don't need that to kill that problem, but it will kill that problem because it will be a quick change on the blockchain and it kills the bank's ability to do that trick. Other tricks it brings in is the ability to get oversight, blah, blah, blah. That to me is the interesting use case. It's about the efficiencies you bring in. And this is what I love about blockchain. It is the excuse to then look to put aside all the old thinking and come up with something new. And that's the new CBDC solve. I'm not saying they're going to replace private. I'm saying they are got interesting ideas. And if you do it right, they're interesting tricks. And that's one I love because I love talking about wheelbarrows because why not?
Because you're a golfer.
Yeah.
Any other questions I have one?
I don't think the CBDCs are going to be on a blockchain. I think the technical document said that they weren't.
CBDCs, in my view, for what it's worth, are a software upgrade of what is already digital currencies at the central bank. I think it's a branding exercise. I think it's a bit of a distraction.
Oh, no, I was just referring to the technical document that basically said that they weren't going to be on a blockchain. But that wasn't my question. Can I have your spreadsheet for the kind of good, bad, and neutral MPs?
Sure, we can get that. The idea was to have dialogue, so very happy to show the underline.
Oh, I would love to see that.
Yeah. It's in the appendix already with by MP or a number of the lawyers. So it's on our website, greengage.co. So it's public, but if you need the spreadsheet, you can give that too.
Or just where to find it. It sounds fascinating. I'd like to be able to locate it.
It is super interesting.
Yeah.
Isn't it on your website?
It's on our website.
Yes. So I can find it. Is it
No water cuts to the chase.
We'll put it up on the screen later.
I've got two questions. One is, does anybody have any direct conversations going on with Treasury at the moment? Are they fully engaged?
Yes.
I just wondered if there's any feedback from there. And the other one is on the insurance industries and where the insurance industry is, where that dialogue is going. Just on those 2 points, Treasury and
If you're interested in insurance, I'm on a panel tomorrow at a legal firm talking about insurance and DeFi. I can connect with you later if we are in that discussion. But Treasury I have not had any conversation with Treasury regarding insurance. However, what I can tell you about the crypto asset team and Andrew Griffiths, who's the junior minister in charge of this sector, is very engaged with the industry. Now, I don't just mean the trade associations, which the UK is and there's others, but also with individual organisations. And when people ask me, can you introduce me to Mr. Griffiths, the minister, I send an email to his private secretary and they meet. They're very engaged with the industry. And that's probably why we have this good policy position at the moment in the UK.
And I think for you, Anthony, the FMI sandbox, there's a guy called Tim Maloney who's sort of running it, who they're still setting the parameters, but I'm connected to him.
We've got a couple of private invitations to brief various departments and ministries, so I'd like to correlate a little bit with those.
Is that both questions there?
Yeah, that's second. Thanks.
Yes, I'm Alan Sellers, your crypto coach from Blockchain Basecamp. Just a crystal ball question, really. So over a period of, say, from now 6 months, 12 months and 2 years, in terms of the FCA and regulations around crypto, what are your predictions in those timeframes?
Well, I think that might be a nice one to finish on, because that's sort of like how we see the future. And I'll start, perhaps at the end of the panel, we'll walk along where we all see the industry being in. What's the time?
6 months, 12 months and 2 years, please, gentlemen.
Sure, so you go first.
Actually, I'm going to defer to the lawyers on this.
It's quite vague and James.
6 months total chaos. What's the next one? 12 months, agreed.
Oh, come on,
5 years, Nirvana.
Can you be more specific, please?
Chaos because in the next 6 months they're going to bring through the whole financial presence regime. That's going to cause a lot of firms to need to go to authorised license and all the rest of it. As far as opening out, there are issues around resourcing. There's going to be changes. We've seen all sorts of regulators put up different frameworks for crypto assets. The general rule of thumb of all those frameworks is that 80% the same, 10% different, 10% we don't really know because they don't know. And that's the sort of short 6 months. Everyone's trying to get the regulator found out. After that, there's going to be a sort of depression moment where a whole lot of firms who weren't fit to get through those regimes get thumped, and that's going to be the depression bit. They will then come together because of the way crypto guys work. It's like laws of physics, things are created and destroyed because they're always there. They will come together, they will get more resources, they will get bigger, and then you'll get a whole big thriving industry because that's how it's going to work, and that's why this 5-year period is going to be nirvana, because that's the moment where people know what they expect to see, the expertise is there are there's the support staff, there's the banks, there's insurance rules and bits. But as we always keep saying to the regulators, no matter how fucking good your regulation is, if you can't get a banker and you can't get the support and you can't get the directors and you can't get this and you can't get that, forget the bloody lawyers, we're irrelevant. It's a bit like if you lose all your crypto. Fuck the law, you've lost all your crypto, you're dead. So those are the bits that have to be fixed, and that's why in 5 years, when the infrastructure is built, it will become stale and boring and it'll be just a general industry like any other. Maybe a bit more than 5 years of stale and boring, but you see what I mean, general idea.
I see a common theme, light and dark in your shades.
So much depends on whether he can get the funding for the Bernie's Not Bank that he's pitching.
Yes, yeah, the wheelbarrow bank. Before we go to another lawyer, let's ask one of our founders to give their crystal ball view.
Honestly, I think 6, 12, and 24 months is probably too narrow a time frame. I think regulators are taking, even if we translate it into 1, 2, and 5 years, I think 5 years we'll finally have the rules on how to handle crypto markets in COVID era. To illustrate the slowest turning wheel there that's juxtaposed against the incredibly quick flywheel of crypto innovation. So that's the glib, facetious answer. I think the real answer is on that timescale, what we will see is a consolidation of definitions, the base taxonomy. The US, the UK, Europe, Singapore's MAS, whoever, they may actually finally agree on the what. And then, in the optimistic scenario in which a regulator's job is to create market efficiency, to prevent money laundering and crime, and to create infrastructure to raise money, maybe we'll see all three of those addressed in that, I guess, 5-year period, in a way that also agrees on what the definitions are. But in the short term, I think realistic expectations need to be 6 months, 12 months, 2 years. And then we'll see all three of those addressed in that 5-year period, in a way that also agrees on what the definitions are. But in the short term, I think realistic expectations need to be 6 months, 12 months, 2 years. And then we'll see all three of those addressed in that 5-year period, in a way that also agrees on what the definitions are. But in the short term, I think realistic expectations need to be 6 months, 12 months, 2 years. And then we'll see all three of those addressed in that 5-year period, in a way that also agrees on what the definitions are. But in the short term, I think realistic expectations need to be 6 months, 12 months, 2 years. And then we'll see all three of those addressed in that 5-year period, in a way that also agrees on what the definitions are. But in the short term, I think realistic expectations need to be 6 months, 12 months, 2 very modest. I don't see much changing anytime soon.
Charles, do you have a view?
Yeah. I think the reason it's difficult to answer the question is that we tend to answer the question from a starting point that the regulation and the regulator will change, but nothing else will change. And we know from crypto that's the one thing that won't be the case. So what can we see is changing for sure? So one, you can't regulate the internet, and as soon as we have the internet, Bitcoin was inevitable. I think James and I spent a lot of our time doing Web3, financialization of everything. He's mentioned DAOs, tokenization of personal data. So all of the implications of that have got to wash through, and I think my background is corporate finance, more than reg as James. I'm not sure that we are going to have the right regulations for a period. The regulations that we're going to have to live with are inevitable because of FTX and others. So it's going to be regulated like it's a traditional financial asset, but it's not. So it will take some time for that to work through.
And the other thing we made is, I think Google regulates the internet. If you ain't Google, you don't exist. Google want you to get authorized for all that you want to put on Google. That's a form of regulation. We've had clients try and get licenses they shouldn't have to get on Google. So, we talk about regulations. I talk about the FCA because I'm obsessed with the FCA in my life. But there is soft regulation. Banks are a form of soft regulation. If you can't get banking, you don't exist. If you can't get in Google, you don't exist. So when we talk about regulation, just bear in mind, everyone thinks of the FCA. What about Google? And nobody is saying, Google, why are you doing this? Google, why are you doing that? They just go, oh, it's Google, it's fine. Google it. And of course, you can't search that because it's on.
Well, I think also, naturally, regulators want to regulate things because that's what they do. So asking a regulator if something should be regulated, asking a politician if something should have a new law applied to it, well, you're only going to get one answer to that question. So this is, probably back to your point around broadening the understanding.
And Sean? Yeah.
So I think the financial services and markets bill will actually have an impact. It'll be soft, but the secondary objectives for innovation and competition, I think, will finally give some backbone actually for people to push and say we need good service to let new companies get registered and do their thing. I agree. I don't think we can say 12 months there'll be any particular changes other than perhaps that new piece of legislation with regulatory movements. But I think the 5-year plan, I'm super bullish on Web3. I think we've all seen that big tech firms own the rails for, I guess you can call it soft regulation. I mean, I think it's pretty hard that you need to work within their ecosystems to actually get what you want. And I just don't like that. I like the idea of people owning data and having freedom. And that's why I think there's also a question around CBDCs. I get the wheelbarrow analogy. I think it's fantastic. But the one concern I have is around privacy and confidentiality and good governance. And if we push central banks, and central banks are really leading that discussion, which is fascinating as well, because the political discussions haven't happened, other than Ron DeSantis now kind of sticking his neck out, saying he doesn't like it. But until we have those discussions, we're not going to have the right framework in place to properly manage how people can then program money. And that's going to be the ultimate gateway, as we've seen with the Canadian truckers. If you push people to behave in certain ways and withdraw their access to financial services, it's not a good look for democracy.
They're all here, so we know they don't trust the government. Because they came to this.
So I think what we're trying to do, and I think we're all kind of singing from the same hymn sheet, is give power to the people that are trying to do the right things, give them access to accounts so that they can build solutions that allow people to own their data. And for us as a business, and why I wanted to have e-money plus a platform, is I think the future proof for us are relationships and data. It's not necessarily going to be the bells and whistles that I think, essentially if we use the whole world as a balance sheet, which is the Web3 kind of journey.
And it would be a security.
Well, what kind of security?
Gensler, the world is a
Gensler, there's a new NFT project which is Gary Gensler kind of in a dress and stuff. I'm not investing in that one just yet. But that's for me very exciting because it helps the small guy to get access to things that they can't get access to.
NFT, so one of the weird things, I know we haven't got time for this, but it's apparent that, so when Elon Musk buys a particular kind of dog, it moves the price of a coin. The regulators who look at market abuse and similar rules haven't seen anything like that before. How do you think about it?
Well, we're going to regulate against market abuse. That's fun. Also, at this point, I'm going to have a panic attack because as a lawyer, you've got all sorts of information you think, fuck. So all my funds gone. But beyond that, yeah, they will be looking at it. It's going to be a hot topic. It's an area they're looking at in particular. It is something which is going to be very much driving force. So even if you've ever thought of ever moving a crypto out of the business, just make a market abuse policy. The rules don't exist yet. It's nice to tell everyone you've got one, and when they come in, you can just update it. Market abuse. You just want a market abuse policy. Just make one.
To give my view, Mr. Bourne, in the short term, we know that there'll be regulatory clarity, which is generally positive. Even though we're in a winter, there's still people building. Companies still have runway from the bull cycle last year, still a lot of capital being burned through. There will be a consolidation. People will fall over, shake out, maybe dot-com bubble S. The regulation will also shake a few things out too, because the cost to be compliant is obviously high. But this technology is revolutionary and transformative, so it doesn't care about jurisdictions and government's regulation, and it will transform many aspects of society, Web3, all sectors. I talked to lots of projects.
Kind of supplementary question, when then do you think independent financial advisors will be able to offer Bitcoin and Ethereum?
When it's regulated.
Which is going to happen in Q3 this year, roughly, because they're going to make investment advice in relation to all crypto assets to regulate the thing. They will probably lean quite heavily on the existing investment advice rules, because they don't have to think too hard, and it's probably going that way. The interesting thing from my end is the robo-advice into play, because there's been a whole shift in the last couple of years around robo-advice, and getting robo-advice to interact with the crypto stuff has been quite fun. Because it's bringing two completely inclusive fintech people into the same boat. And also, sort of like crypto, like robo-advice, the biggest issue there is also with regards to the FSCS protection, because by and large, when you fuck up your advice, the damage is limited to 10K because of the rules. If you do robo-advice, you can times 10K times 1 million people, because that's the way the platforms work, and then we get to bankrupt the company, which is not an owning great moment. So that's going to be an interesting bit there, and that's, again, all the rules not working particularly well for it, but what do you do as an alternative? Next big question.
Right, well I think that's probably a wrap. We're probably all parched and now time for some socialising. So without any further ado, let's thank our panel. Thank you.